3, go. Welcome to Marriage with Joy, which is the most open discussion on the internet about the positive, purposeful, powerful, pleasant aspects of living in harmony with matrimony. Marriage with Joy unabashedly discusses the most interesting questions raised by listeners. Our informed and informative panel addresses issues with thought, wit, and aplomb. Voted best of the web 2 years running. Good day, beautiful, bountiful, beloved, immortal beings, and good-looking people. Remember, you're good-looking. You're always looking for and finding the good, and you found good in abundance because you've tuned in consciously and conscientiously to Marriage with Joy, where we discuss the intimate details of living a wonderful life in a married situation and living it in full joy, because joy is the essential foundation block for living a life in marriage with another person and creating with that those two people family relationships, either through their own selves or in working with people in a community. And the ability to live with another human being in harmony, in matrimony, is really the essential aspect of learning how to live with oneself in what we call joy. Joy stands for Journey of You. Now, this particular show is actually quite consequential and historic. Historic because my voice is going. So I'm going to be speaking less and have the wonderful ladies speak more. Historic because it's, I think not tonight or tomorrow, I guess tomorrow night is what they call Halloween. And Halloween is fun because it's become one of the most interesting, and I don't know how, but sort of important holidays in the American calendar. If you just count by the amount of money that is spent on Halloween and what people do to dress up and celebrate it, even though it has to do with death. I don't know why, but people like that whole idea. And of course, historic because this time next week, we're on Wednesday, October 30th. By this time next week, the world will wake up and, God willing, know something about the United States of America and where it's going for the next few years. It's quite a mystery at the moment, and which is almost always is. You know, Michael Medved, who is Diane's consort, marriage partner, and friend for decades and decades, is one of the most, how should we say, insightful and knowledgeable people when it comes to American politics. And he will tell you that this is just the nature of the beast. This is what happens at every election. You never know. You know, when Dewey beat Truman, which didn't happen, there was a newspaper that was printed like that. So one never knows. We do what we can, and we believe in the goodness of America, the goodness of the good Lord, and most importantly, the goodness of the American population. And what happens here affects everybody. And I think that's an interesting introduction to, oh, thank you, wonderful Lori's here. Thank you, wonderful Lori. An introduction to our topic today, which is all about the F word.
Hold on, let me go to my...
Can you hear us? Okay, I'm just doing the introduction. And with marriage, we're talking about the F word. Now, it's not a four-letter F word, it's a longer F word. The word is friend, friendship, the ability for people to not just live in harmony in matrimony, but to make it a relationship that's built in friendship. And I have hundreds and hundreds of emails, and I'm going to boil it down to a few.
Did you buy it or did I buy it?
I bought it.
Okay, I want to mention two things also. We are live right now on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, and X. So people all over the world can see us and understand what's going on. And as I said, we get, thank God, people always interested and they like to share it. So we urge you to share this with 5 people and rate it and just keep spreading the word of what's going on here, because people love the show because we're open and honest. So we're talking about friendship, the F word, and I want to mention there's not so much a question that I've been getting, but people have been asking, how does one define friendship vis-a-vis a marriage? Is it in any way different between two married people? And again, on a human level, I advocate man and woman, but it really doesn't matter if it's two living people. I wholeheartedly endorse that. 5 people, 3 people, okay, a horse and a dog and a cat, I don't know, but 2 people in a loving relationship, that creates a unique bond. How does that relate to friendship? Because friendship is characterized by 3 words, I think. This is what I got, not from me, but from people sending in notes. One is choice. People choose to be friends with other people. It's very different than family. Family, you don't have a choice. And you may like him, you don't like him. It's a different situation. Choice is a foundation for friendship. Shared experience. That happens a lot in friendships. That's what helps oftentimes create deeper bonds and such like that. And of course, the most important of all, at least I think, it wasn't mentioned as the most important, I think, is the T word, which is trust. So using those 3 as a springboard, I'd like to, as we always do, with our leadoff batter in the World Series, which seems to be going the way of the Dodgers at the moment. It's another historic event. The Dodgers versus the Yankees. It's too fascinating. Our leadoff batter in the great Northwest, wonderful Dr. Diane Medved, an expert in the subject of marriage and divorce and her advocacy of not entering into the second, but staying in the first, and successful marriage to a wonderful man for decades. And I'm happy to say, friends with me for decades. It's a very nice thing. Hello. So I'd like to start off with you, wonderful Dr. Diane Medved, and let's talk about friendship that is based more on choice than on circumstance.
Well, as you said, that's the basis of every friendship. Choice. You said 3 things, and one of which was choice. And every day that a couple is married, they choose to be there. And so marriage is probably the most intense and consequential friendship of choice that one can have in one's life. And it isn't just that you make the choice on the day that you say, I do. It's that you make the choice every day to make it the way that it's going to be. So you have a choice when you wake up in the morning to say, I'm going to embrace this day. Aren't I the most lucky person? I get to be married to, and look over at him or her and be grateful for everything that you have, which will start you off on a good relationship. But you know something, many times people treat their spouses worse than they treat their friends. And it's hard for me to understand how that benefits them. But they get so familiar with a spouse, someone who can see them go to the bathroom, someone who can see them in disarray with no makeup on, and someone who sees the mess that they make, and they take them for granted, and they see them almost like themselves. And so they can be not trusting, and they can be not caring, and they can be not attentive as they might be to a girlfriend or to somebody else who's a business associate friend. And I think that's the main message that I would say about the friendship of marriage, is that it's so intense and it's so impersonal, so personal and so consequential that we need to pay attention to it and make it the number 1 friendship in our lives, instead of just the taken for granted kind of friendship. The other thing I want to add, I don't want to take too long, but the other thing I want to add is that marriage is special because you expect it to include your ezer kenegdo. And what that is in Hebrew, your helpmate opposite you. And what does that mean, opposite you? This is someone that you can trust is on your team and tell you when you're making a mistake, can tell you when things should be different. Maybe you misphrase something and hurt someone's feelings. This is somewhere where the friendship is so well seated in your psyche and your love and your consciousness that it's okay if the other person comes to you with suggestions or improvements or whatever. You're not going to take that as cutting to the core, because you know you're trying for the same thing, which is closeness together and closeness and success in the world. So I think that that's what makes marriage a special kind of friendship that goes beyond the normal friendships, despite the fact that we can tend to take it for granted and treat it as less.
So this is, oh, that's 4 chapters in a book. Thank you. I want to unpack a few words here because I wrote them down. I love the phrasing. Intense and consequential. That is marriage, isn't it? Intense, certainly. Consequential, absolutely. And the G word, gratitude. And is it not true that to be in another person's proximity on a regular basis, obviously it's not 24/7, but it's certainly 7, or almost always 7, and it's a lot of hours in a day with that, in quotation marks, same person, and yet recognize it's not the same person. There's a, to find the newness in someone. I think that is an essential aspect also, as you mentioned so nicely, Diane, about gratitude, that you can be with somebody over the course of time, a year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 10 years, 20, 47 years, and recognize, that's not the same person I married. Well, wow, isn't that wonderful? As opposed to saying, well, that's not the same person I married. That attitude of gratitude and unfolding and allowing me to be me. Woo, that's very wonderful. It makes me tingle. Thank you so much. Wonderful Maura, who has weathered several hurricanes and storms down in Tampa Bay over the past couple of weeks. And she's arrayed in her long necklace of Lucky Charms that she got out of the cereal box, Lucky Charms box. Tell us about what for you and for Jimmy, and how you see friendship and marriage using the idea of choice.
I never know what you're going to talk about. There's always some big things. Friendship. I will tell you, I never wanted to get married growing up. I met one person for the first time and I thought, wow, this man is extraordinary. I could take him anywhere. And I'm sure I've shared that. He is my very best friend. He is. And there's so many things that I could just jump off on what Diane said. Probably when you said friendship, what are the 3 things? My first thing was honesty. When you can choose your mate, your partner for life, and there is a friendship at the root of it, and it's based in honesty and mutual trust, what an incredible foundation. And I was laughing just about 10 minutes before we came on. I forgot what my husband said. I work at the elections office too, in one of the most consequential counties in the nation, where we just happened to have 2 hurricanes and a third, and we had to keep changing things. And I laughed, and I'm looking for something. And I said, where's my file for tomorrow, Jimmy? I need it. And then I laughed. I said, do you realize not many that you put up with me like you do? And I said, I tell everybody I'm the only man that would put up with me. He loves it. And I used to say to him, you made me this way. So getting back to friendship, the things I came up with were, you make a choice, but the things for me, honesty. I have found this not only in our marriage, but in all my best friends. I've got great friends, some of whom I've had for decades. Others are more recent. But I will tell you, from the time I was young, I always liked having friends that were honest and therefore trustworthy. And when you can have a marriage that's got that going for you, it is such a strong foundation, because then there's this ability to go, I forgot what you referred to it as. I think you used a Jewish term, Diane. And I was thinking, okay. And for some reason, even though I never use it, but it came to mind, it's the yin and yang. When you have a marriage partner who's also your friend, there are things you do, and let's say you exude out in small relationships, out in public, and then you have a marriage partner that could say, "Oh, I think you could have been a little lighter on that," or "Be careful of these people. You don't want to hurt their feeling." You have the benefit of a good friend who gives you another perspective that you can trust in. You may see yourself one way, but to have someone else that has your best interest in mind and they help you see a better picture and deliver something better in your relationships to other people, it is such an unbelievable benefit. The last thing I would say, and I could probably go on forever too, that's why I love this podcast, because you always give us so many great things to discuss and to chew over, that we can, over the course of our marriages and in the friendships that develop, become such ultimate beneficiaries. I could hear it in Diane speaking, where you go through these relationships, whether they're easy or challenging. When you choose to stay in that relationship, even during harder times, and you have the right attitude of mind, you literally come out as such a beneficiary. And I hope this last thing I'm going to say helps someone who's listening today. Not every marriage is going to be the 24/7 bed of roses. I will tell you how many years we went through where I would have to mention things to Jimmy about his family, the in-laws. He would mention things about mine. We all bring different things into the relationship. I had a mother-in-law for 40 years who never quite accepted me because I wasn't 100% Polish. In fact, I was 0% Polish. But you know what? I never was nasty. I never retaliated. Not that she was even that type, but not being accepted. I look at myself today for the endurance sake of it all. And here's how I ended up being a beneficiary. I have so much love, compassion, endurance, understanding for other people. So maybe there's somebody even today that's looking at it thinking, well, I thought I made a choice and now I don't like the choice. Even when you go through challenging times and you stay in it and with it and you have the right attitude, you can literally come out as a beneficiary, meaning you personally grow as an individual, maybe in ways you hadn't planned on it. But if you have the right attitude, you will come out a better person in the end. So that's my stuff.
Woo! There's 4 more chapters. So, 2 words I love: beneficiary, or benefits, and perspective. And I'm going to chime in here. Although I have not had the opportunity to meet personally Maura or Jimmy, I feel very close to both of them. And I called Maura a day, I think day before the Helene was supposed to hit, or Milton, or whatever.
But before Milton.
Before Milton. And so I'm just calling, just say hello, make sure you're okay. And Jimmy gets on the phone also, and we're talking, and just the ease and the lightness and the beauty of that feeling of confidence and friendship. It's truly wonderful and beautiful. The idea, you're right, of being the beneficiary and the perspective through the challenge. So when Diane mentioned this phrase, ezer kenegdo, neged means next to, and it can be next to meaning close, and next to meaning 2 stones rubbing against each other. And when you have 2 stones, let's say Flintstones, you can create sparks, make a fire. So, but the point is that they can polish each other also. Sometimes that polishing, you don't hear the stones going, but you come out better for it. As you said, more compassionate. Hey, mothers-in-law are like that. That's part of the package. But it's very beautiful. Talk about challenging times and going through them, coming out better. I don't think there's anybody that embodies that more than wonderful Lori. So, Lori, please tell us what you would like to bring to discuss this idea of marriage, friendship, and using choice as the hinge on the door.
Interesting, because when I first met my husband, I was actually dating his best friend and roommate. So he and I were friends for a year until it dawned on him that he wants to date me. And I thought he was crazy because I wasn't ready to get married. And he was the type of person you would marry. And I didn't want to get married yet. So I avoided it. But in the end, I ended up marrying him. But when we dated, we were friends first. And I think that's really important because that just kind of lasts. I mean, I actually liked him as a person. So, you go back to that. And I think that's important. In my coaching right now, some of the wives I have, though he leaves and she's there and he wants to be friends with her. And they're like, no, I'm not going to be friends with someone who would treat me like that. And I say, you have 3 kids together. You have 4 kids together. Let's be friends again because that's how you started. And that's the way to bring him home through friendship. And, I was adopted. And so my family, my parents obviously were friends and then they got married. And then there's my brother and I. And, we all were not blood. None of us were blood, yet we lived harmoniously in a family. And we had uncles and aunts who weren't really blood either. They were just friends, but we considered them family. And to this day, I still call them aunts and uncles. Most of them live down in Florida. And they're wonderful people, but they're not my blood. We've chosen to make them family because we love them. And you don't have to be blood. And that's my 2 cents. How's that sound?
That was very touching. And again, let's talk about, without going into the details, the challenges of being married, because by definition, if you're married for more than 2, 3, 5 years or a decade, stuff happens. And the ability to have that foundation in friendship can bring back strengths that enable one to get through difficult times.
Right. And I do believe when 2 people get married, sometimes they think they're each other, like the 1 candle you married to 2, or sorry, the 2 candles you married to 1. And today they now keep them separate. I do believe that if we remain, friends, instead of combining each other and expecting that person to be, do, say, just like I do, we're going to get let down. I don't do that to my friends. I don't expect my friends to be, do, say like I am. I like that they're different. And so honoring the friendship in your relationship, I think makes it last longer. Because at the end of the day, you have each other's back and you both want what's good for each other.
I like this. Friendship enables the relationship to last longer. I want to go back to something that Diane mentioned in the beginning of the discussion about the closeness with a spouse different than a friend. With a friend, you don't see them in hair rollers. Well, I don't wear hair rollers, but with hair rollers or makeup or just the natural human condition. So I had I guess today we call him a coach, like you mentioned, but at the time he wasn't a coach. He was an older person who was one of my teachers, and he taught me something when I was 17, when I had no idea about getting married. Obviously, thought I was going to get married someday, but I'm 17. I'm only thinking about girls from a sexual point of view. And he said to me the amazing phrase, which I keep bringing up. I'm going to mention it now, and I hope it will raise eyebrows and make you think, and then we'll discuss next. He said there's a very famous line in English literature: familiarity breeds contempt. Did you ever hear that line? Familiarity breeds contempt. For those people who don't know it, you can look it up and say that, because that's what usually happens. You meet somebody who you think, oh my gosh, I always wanted to meet this person, and you realize it's a regular person. So they come off the pedestal. Familiarity breeds contempt. So he said to me, when you're married and you want to have something that's going to last and it's going to grow, familiarity breeds awe. AWE. Like you said, Diane, you look next and say, now this is the guy I've been with for 35 years. And not just like, what? And I say, wow. Awe. The more I know about the person, the more awesome they are. I mean, especially for kids, right? Let's be blunt. In common parlance, people use the term awesome. Nobody knows what it means. If they did, they wouldn't use it so much. But the ability for familiarity to breed, and that's where gratitude comes in, I believe. That awesomeness of, wow, this person, we've been through so much. We've done all this. And we still not only talk to each other, we like each other. We can laugh. I come into the house. Maura comes to the house, and Jimmy's there in his basketball jersey, and she's saying, "Yay, Jimmy!" I don't know if you do that, but I'm just mentioning. We can't hear you.
Jimmy does love Yay Jimmy. His big thing is, give me something written on paper about how much you love me.
So it's when I heard that, again, I was 17. I had no idea what he was talking about, but it has helped me over the decades. And that's why I share it today, because I write about it, I talk about it. And I'm going to talk about one story, and then we'll go to next part of the series. So during my wayward youth, when I was 16, 17, 18, we used to play a lot of poker as kids, guys. That was the big thing. And we're talking about penny poker, pennies, nickels, dimes. If you won $2, it was a big thing. But that was 60 years ago. So you could actually buy something for a nickel. And we would cut out of school early to play poker. So we went over to a friend of mine's house, and 5, 6, 7 guys. And it happened to be that this particular fellow's parents had been divorced. They're the only people we knew that were divorced. Anyway, we go there 3, 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock in the afternoon, and his father comes home and he sees, 6, 7 high school kids playing poker. So he said, "Okay, kids, break it up, get out, go. She's playing outside." Okay, fine. But this is my best friend at the time. He says, "Guys, I want to tell you something." He said, "You see those guys that you're playing poker with? They may be nice guys, but I don't think that's not the people you want to hang around with. You want to hang around." He said, "Barry, you want to hang around with my son?" And he said to his son, "You want to hang around with Barry because you're good guys. You really want to do something." And he told me something that, again, I was 17, maybe 16, stuck in my mind, helped me for years. He said, "If you can count your friends on your thumbs, you're doing well in life." Now, I can tell you, I've had lots of friends in my life. If I can count them on my thumbs, I think excluding my wife, I'm doing well. So what I'd like to talk about now is the idea of friendship in a seemingly changed environment in the 21st century, the year 2024. And again, I hope people will be watching and listening to this 100 years from now. It seems that friendships or the word friendship is more loose than it ever was. And it may be more difficult to create a bonded friendship in today's environment when people count friends on Facebook or any social media in the dozens, hundreds, thousands. How many friends do you have? 4,009. Oh, 4,000. Come on, I got 29. 29,000. I got a 1.8 million followers. What does that mean? So to have Diane start off, is it more difficult today, or is it just imagination that it's more difficult in today's environment to create a bonded friendship with another or two other really close friends?
No, I think you're right that it is more difficult. And the reason is we have our friends in our palms, and we end up spending our attention on them rather than on the real world. And we get more out of it in a way, because otherwise, why would we choose it? It's actually more difficult to cultivate a true friendship than it is to have a superficial friendship. Now, we need the true friendships more, and they're much more important to our lives. And that's why some of us feel lonely and empty, because the environment is such that it's more difficult to maintain the kind of friendship that would be there for you. And I think that we have to work to ensure that our children are doing that. And I think the movement to remove devices from schools is a positive. Because in the days when, I'm old enough to remember, I don't even want to admit, when there was one phone in the family, and it was in the phone nook in the hall, and you had to share it. And now everyone is so involved in their individual, and they think it's so important to catch things when they come in. I've got to get that email immediately. I've got to answer that text immediately. I've got to reply and deal with what is really falsehood. It's not real. It's in the ether. And it's a problem, because how do you teach kids and how do we discipline ourselves when we're the ones who are running to answer our phones too, in front of the kids? I hear a ding and I'm with the kids and I feel like I have to answer it. It's a pressure. And I think what we need to do is discuss it more and treasure our friendships more and express our gratitude to our real friends more, and hope that they can not only be on your thumbs, but on the rest of your fingers too. My best friends are probably on one hand. And I think that's a lot.
Yeah.
But these are people who, frankly, without social media and the phone, I wouldn't have as close a friendship with. So I have to say, I'm glad I can call them, pick up the phone and say, how are you? Just like Barry, you called up Maura and said, how are you doing with those hurricanes? I care about you. So these can be tools and they can be dividers. And we have to work to make them tools instead of dividers. And I think it's a real big problem. And I don't really have a complete answer, except that we should write out every day what our priorities are, who we should talk to, who we should be with, and how we can improve the quality of the relationships that we really care about.
So let's unpack a few things you mentioned. You're right. We have our world in our palm today. And you mentioned a couple other very powerful words. It's a world where people can feel lonely and empty very easily, even with all of the things happening, with the emails, with the texts, with the act. It doesn't matter what it is. And yet it seems more impersonal. It's happening out there and things going on. And the ability to separate from immediacy to a disciplined response. That's I think part of the human condition always. That famous story about Abraham Lincoln. I guess I can talk about Abraham Lincoln. Everybody knows who he is. You know, people listen all over the world. They don't have to do a Google. Actually, they probably do have to do a Google and find out that he's more than just somebody on a American dollar bill. Not dollar, but the $5 bill. But Abraham Lincoln admitted that he had a very strong temper. And he was very good with words. And when somebody would upset him or anger him, he would write out a letter by longhand and say everything he wanted to say to that person in the letter, look at it, smile, open up his drawer, put the letter in the drawer, close the drawer. And then he'd decide if he was going to send it or not. Most often, he would never send it. The ability, though, to discipline oneself it's rare. And it's always been that way. That's just the nature of life. Today's environment, the stress is far more, or the pressure to respond more. And you're right, Diane, to be able to have a handful of friends that you can interact with on a less immediate and more intimate level, I think is one way. And you're right. Thank God there's a book now and there's a movement to not enable kids to have phones in schools. It's throughout, well, it was voted on in Los Angeles County. I think it's happening nationwide. Many schools are adopting it. They check their phones in the morning and they get them back in the afternoon. And the ability, because otherwise you can't say to a kid or even an adult, don't respond. Hello. You know, we're all Pavlovian. So Maura, what do you think about the ability to cultivate and create friendships in today's environment compared to other times?
Mute.
Oh,
Unmute.
unmute yourself, woman.
But as opposed to being on our phone with social media, you know, there are pros and cons about everything. There's a difference between the immediate reaction people get when, right, all these friends, all these followers, that I think feeds into maybe more of an ego thing than it does into a heart and a soul type thing. Now, I'm glad you mentioned all this because it didn't give me an opportunity to tell you what happened when I picked up the phone 2 weeks ago, whenever it was, and it was Barry on the phone. He said, "I want to know how you two are doing." Barry and I, and Jimmy, my husband, we live on opposite sides of the nation. We've never met in the flesh. But he called, he was concerned, and my husband says to me, "I love Barry. He is such a good friend." Now, that's something that we all should be thinking about or mindful of. Whether we're talking to younger people today that grew up in the era of it's all about social media, or people in our age bracket where we didn't. Whether it is online, let's say you have some close friends or family members you want to text, or you are looking at how many people like the picture you posted. There's a big difference between the two. Barry and I, it's an example of how our electronics, modern day, help us stay in touch. But really, it's not the fact that we got a phone call in between hurricanes. It was that someone was thinking about us, and we had a chance to use modern day technology to be in touch. It was so fun just to chat for a few moments and laugh. It made all of us feel good. But that is really the centerpiece of a relationship. It's not about, oh, I know so-and-so, I'm connected with this one, so-and-so gave me a like. But it is, what are these relationships like to us? Are they people we like and respect in a genuine fashion? They don't have to be a named person. There's someone that maybe we love, someone that we value. And those things feed our soul. And I think that probably the biggest challenge, in addition to always feeling like, oh, the phone rang, got to answer it, or, what happened with the latest ding, is at the end of the day, think to yourself, how was I investing in my time and my relationships? Because we could actually end up not paying attention to the people that mean so much to us while busying ourselves and distracting ourselves with nothing more than numbers that are adding up on a phone, social media site. And I think I've always been this way, and I would do it a lot in my podcast to remind people, spend time by yourself, spend time in reflection, because it's very easy to get caught up in the vortex of what we're told is important. No, what's important is what's important in our hearts. And when it's all said and done, when this life is over, it's the important things of the heart that really last with us. And they're also the things that we find at the very end of the line that we value the most. So where are we putting our time? Where are we investing our relationships? And why not invest them in places that really make us beneficiaries, not only to receive, but also to give and exchange?
So I ask you, do you think it's more challenging today than when you were growing up? And if it's possible, think back to when you were 16-year-old teenage girl. Do you think that you would be a 16-year-old teenage girl like today, addicted?
No. You know what? I never was that type. I was always on the side of the road. I could get along with everybody, but I was never part of the in crowd. You could never label me as anything. I was always busy with my own thoughts. I was an idea person, and I was always going deeper, and I was more artistic. So no, even if it were today, I'd probably be among those kids that were looking maybe for things that had more enduring value.
Value. Oh, the V word. I like that. Value. So, Lori, you're in an interesting position because you have 3 kids that are in the vortex. I mean, they're from high school and in college. And I presume that they all have friends. Do you think that it's more difficult for them than for you? Maybe it's not, to have closer friends today than it was when you were growing up.
You just threw. I was thinking about what I was going to say. You just threw a wrench in it, adding about my kids. I think it's difficult. My son had an okay time with it because he had to work really hard to make friends based on some things that happened when he was younger, just with friendships. And he learned how to make a friend in third grade. And those skills he still has today. Now he's living in a different city and he's got to, work on brand new friendships. And I think he's pretty good at it just because of what happened when he was younger, where all of his friends turned on him and he was like, and I said, well, say goodbye. Let's turn and find some new ones. And he did okay. So my middle daughter, she struggles with that a little bit. She had friends who turned away from her, and she's kind of a little homebody, like to herself, but she does have some good friends, and I think that's cool. My younger one, I think it's about being comfortable to talk to anyone and liking yourself enough to be able to communicate. But this thing's a problem. We did Airbnb at our house for quite some time. And my children at a young age were forced to talk to strangers who would come into our house, even people that spoke another language. So getting them to, obviously they couldn't talk to them on this, talk to people. So they got really good at that. So I think we're okay, but my kids are weird. That's a different story. But what I was going to say about friendships is I choose, talking about choosing, I literally think about during a week, who haven't I seen lately and how can I invest in my friendships? Because if I'm sitting around on a Friday night and I have nothing to do and I have no one to call, that's my fault because I didn't choose to reach out to people, to connect to them, to build a friendship. And I don't want to say this like it sounds weird, but I date my friends. Let's go to lunch. Let's go to coffee. Probably twice a month, I go to this happy hour with like a bunch of people in my neighborhood. It's a neighborhood happy hour. This lady does it all the time. And then sometimes I meet with the women from that group elsewhere and we're forming a really nice friendship. And then I also do a couple parties a year, a thank you party, and then maybe a holiday party of something else.
I was hoping you would mention that, have the thank you party, not the Thanksgiving. I mean, it's the same thing, but the thank you party.
Yeah.
I want to tie this into marriage because I think that at least what we're discussing at the moment, now let's be blunt, we're all older adults. We're not 16 to 25-year-old kids with the digital natives with this thing. And I think that it's an interesting dilemma. I think there's an addiction situation that's happening in our country. Leave that aside for the moment. I believe that the marriage experience helps children and grandchildren. In other words, they can learn more from us.
Yes. So I'm going to share something with you. Yesterday, I heard on the news that there was this study done just the other night when I think it was Donald Trump was being interviewed. Oh yeah, when Donald Trump was on that podcast with that guy for 3 hours. What's his name?
Joe Rogan. That guy. I love it. Joe Rogan.
So it was a 3-hour interview.
Right.
Most adults, we don't need to watch it. We know what their faces are doing. We tune in here. Younger people wanted to see they wanted to see their faces and watch the conversation because they don't see that often. We experience it all the time. And I thought that was interesting, right? Because they're not going to just listen to it because two people are going to talk for 3 hours. This is fascinating, right? And to us, it's like, well, of course.
First of all, what a wonderful insight. And I'm glad that you said that it's younger people who were fascinated and maybe even listened. Mm-hmm. That people could actually have conversations that last more than a minute and a half. Mm-hmm. Because that's the time frame usually of people, let's be blunt. One of the benefits, if there is such thing, in texting is that it's short. Mm. Nobody's going to read. Who reads a book these days? Okay, we're all crazy. All of us read books. I like reading. Michael probably reads 2 books a week, 3 books a week, maybe. That's me also. Okay, that's how not only I was raised that way. That's my choice. I love reading. It's unusual because it means investing time. And I think that's part of the issue. We sort of talked around the subject of friendship is that investment of time. How amazing. So I'll tell a story that, and Diane knows this particular person. His name is Don Michel. And I say with great love and respect, all of Shalom, may his name for a blessing, rest in peace. His wonderful wife, Dr. Judith Michel. So actually her birthday today, Diane. And she's, I think, 89.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Oh, my goodness.
That's right. You remember when she was not. Anyway, so Dawn and I were close friends for years, decades. And him more than me, to his credit more. There wasn't a month that went by where Donald not just called me up and said, "Sure, let's meet for coffee or lunch." We had coffee or lunch at least once a month for decades. That's amazing. Again, more often him calling me, but that's not the point. Is to make the time, especially in Los Angeles, where it takes 10, 20 minutes to get someplace. So you're going to invest at least an hour with some, but that's that commitment to wanting to be with somebody and speaking to another person, creating, out of choice, creating the time, creating the bond, and then the T word comes in, the trust. So you can actually talk to somebody about something that really matters, something that really matters. And I think that's part of society in any time and space was that people, let's be blunt, so many people meet so many people, it gets to be superficial. The ability to have a handful, like you said, Diane, or thumbs, it's a wonderful thing. And to cherish that and to nurture that. And I think that marriage is the conduit that enables that to happen. It gives someone strength to be able to go out to reach out to other people. I think marriage is I know marriage is a bonding mechanism that enables a human being to be more than what they are. I mean, we've all experienced that, right? I'm carrying around my wife when I'm out there. And if I say something wrong, I say, hello, you shouldn't talk like that. Or, oh, that was good. But that ability to have that strength, that super power called marriage, I don't think it exists in any other kind of relationship. So I think that today was, at least for me, was especially wonderful. Now, I was thinking about this, and then I made a quick decision about a fraction of a second ago. I was going to ask everybody who they think is going to win the election, but I don't want to put anybody on the spot. So I'm going to I'm not even going to ask it. It is what it is. And it's we live in, and it's a very famous Chinese curse or blessing. You should live in interesting times. We do. So, but by this time, next time we meet, it will be an interesting world, and we'll not talk about it. So again, marriage, friendship with some of the most remarkable people on the planet, Dr. Diane Medved and wonderful Maura Sweeney and Lori McDermott, and the ambassador of joy, Barry Shaw. I'd like to give a blessing from all of us to all of you around the world, because people listen from all over the world. We urge you, go forth, live exuberantly, spread the seeds of joy, happiness, peace, and love. And let's do a quick group hug. You ready? 1, 2, 3. Up. Heartfelt, unlimited giving. Best wishes, everybody. Bye. Welcome to Marriage with Joy, which is the most open discussion on the internet about the positive, purposeful, powerful, pleasant aspects of living in harmony with matrimony. Marriage with Joy unabashedly discusses the most interesting questions raised by listeners. Our informed and informative panel addresses issues with thought, wit, and aplomb. Voted best of the web 2 years running.
Thank you for calling P3 Medical Group. This is Yureli. How may I assist you?
Hello.